Well, this administration is trying to produce more jobs for the government contractors as well as for the civilian as well. As I
Absolutely,
understand, yeah.
yes.
Do you see a turnaround in business activity among your clients?
Yes, I think many of them are seeing, particularly in this quarter, Frank, more deal flow. I mean, we as lawyers tend to see things from the term sheet stage through to completion. Lots of term sheets were being floated around earlier in the year.
But
Not too many deals were, meaning a
uh,
term sheet, meaning the principal terms of a transaction that
Okay.
will then be papered in a definitive agreement.
I got you.
So, so when people are talking about the preliminary terms of a deal, you have a sense of what's coming down the road, right? There were many of those floating around, but several of those deals didn't come to fruition or didn't close because of various factors, lack of financing and so forth. What we're seeing now is, I think, a lot of the term sheets are for real deals that appear to be happening, knock on wood. So I think that in the last quarter, things have started to stabilize, and I think this quarter things are starting to pick up. And typically in this second half of the year, I think, Frank, things tend to pick up anyway, right? So
Well, the stock market is doing good also.
certainly, yes. And I think that's giving the consumers more confidence, and hopefully when they spend, the businesses that rely on consumer spending will do well again.
Describe some of the more interesting, engaging technologies that you believe will be commercialized in the next few years. And you talked a little bit about some of the large defense giants are here, Lockheed Martin,
Sure,
Boeing, Northrop
sure.
Grumman,
Right.
and General Dynamics, and so on and so forth. And they spin out some of these technologies
Sure,
commercially. So
sure.
tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, I think particularly in the Homeland Security sector, as you know, and I had an interesting...
And the Department of Defense as well.
Exactly, the Defense Department and the like. The amount of investment that's gone into these kinds of security and defensive technologies is immense, and so you always have some of that filter into even the venture-backed community, and there are venture funds, as you know, that specifically focus on sort of Homeland Security and other defense technologies. And so we've seen a lot of these come to fruition that wouldn't otherwise have happened. 3 years ago, for instance, I had occasion to work on an interesting licensing deal with an Australian company that had a new technology to detect things like bombs and the like that are perhaps embedded in shoes or other devices that wouldn't have been detected hitherto. So they licensed it to another large company. They didn't publicize the deal, but they licensed their technology to another large company that's in the defense space. And the thought was that both companies then were going to commercialize these, and they were going to be made into these huge machines that you see at the airport that are scanners, but with much more robust and precise technologies to sense any bombs or other sort of bad things that might be in the baggage and the like. So
Good. What would you advise a young man or woman considering a career in technology and intellectual property law?
The first thing I would say, Frank, is that they should look past the current recession, because like the businesses that we serve, law firms have also been hit pretty hard, and the newspapers are rife with stories about law firm layoffs and the like of associates and the like. And the first thing I would say to them is, this, just like any other sector of the economy, the legal sector will too recover. It's already showing signs of stabilizing. And the second thing really is that they need to look beyond just the general area of their own, think about what specifically they wish to accomplish with it. You just introduced me to a great immigration lawyer. If they're interested in immigration law, that's one field. If they have a technical or scientific background, perhaps like I did, they might go into intellectual property or technology. If they believe that they'd rather be in litigation in the courtroom all the time and they have great oral advocacy skills and they think that's an asset, think hard about litigation. But really going to law school is just a precursor to deciding what kind of lawyer you will be. So they need to think hard about that, and they shouldn't be discouraged by the current economic climate.
Aim high, work hard, pursue your dream.
Absolutely. That's the way we succeed in America, isn't it?
That's how you succeed in America. And that's the advice you give to the young people in our audience.
Absolutely.
I'm very much fond of the young people because they are hope of tomorrow. And we must do what we can to create an environment that allows them to excel.
Absolutely.
And exploit their potentials.
Absolutely, Frank.
And sometimes we forget that part.
No, and indeed, as we were just talking, things like you do with funding major universities with new initiatives and new programs is very much a part of that, because the successful entrepreneurs need to give back to the community so that the young ones can come along and prosper themselves, right, Frank? So
a great segue to my next question is, I believe very strongly giving back to our community, our country, a noble cause.
Indeed.
We must all participate in that process. And those are the things that we'll leave behind. When we leave behind our legacy, hopefully they will live in bright lights and dark shadows, and those shadows will be everywhere. Now tell me, what sort of activities, Mike, have you been engaged giving back to your community, for that matter to our country,
Sure.
that we all love and care deeply?
Absolutely, Frank. And that's why we're all here, right? So many of us are immigrants who came to the U.S. to really work hard and see if we could make a success of it. And some of us have succeeded, and others are still trying to find the success.
Well, we need to become the hope for the people who are hopeless. We need to become the voice for those people who are voiceless.
Absolutely. In our case, and in my individual case as well as in the case of my firm, we tend to have a very strong tradition of free legal service we call pro bono services, right? So you help the indigents and you help the poor, and that's our way of giving back to the community. But even in that area, you have all kinds of different clients that seek your assistance. Some of the more interesting things I've worked on are, in the international human rights area. I once was asked by the International Human Rights Law Group to study some of the amnesty laws in East Timor and all the troubles that had happened there, and to analyze it to see if the amnesty program was indeed sort of consistent with international norms and the like. Other areas of law in which I've been involved, in fact, are in the immigration area. I've done asylum work for free for many years, and I've recently took on another matter where we're helping a young woman from Honduras get asylum in the United States. So some of us were fortunate to get here and succeed from the word go. Others had to struggle to get here, and maybe in this way we'll help this young lady get asylum and then get her status regularized, and perhaps she too will be a success story in the U.S. over time.
What about your firm, Mike? What did they do to get back to the community?
Sure. I mean, one of the more interesting things, and when you come to our firm's website, you'll see this black and white picture of Clarence Earl Gideon. And that's kind of an emblematic case for us, Frank. It goes back many, many years. It was the case called Gideon versus Wainwright, which established the principle, Frank, that the poor are entitled to court-appointed counsel. And this was a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it became a lovely book written by Tony Lewis, the New York Times columnist, right, called Gideon's Trumpet. It was actually even made into a movie. And so we quite often, when we want to inspire the younger lawyers in the firm, mention that's sort of our heritage, that's part of what we do. But that's just one case. We do landlord-tenant work, we do refugee work. As I mentioned to you, we have this whole immigration group that does immigration pro bono. We do cases that deal with violence against women. The Tahirih Justice Center has been a long-standing client of ours. We do employment discrimination. The Tahirih, which deals with more gender-based violence and gender-based issues. They've been a long-standing pro bono client of ours. One of my partners handled the case that is known more colloquially as the mail-order bride cases. And we also handle a number of matters for another group in town that deals with discrimination claims against the poor and the like. So that's sort of a broad smattering of the kind of pro bono work that our firm has done for free.
So what advice did you have for the audience, for the young people watching this show, that Mike made it, and how can I make it?
I don't know that Mike has made it. I think it's a continuing struggle, Frank, but thank you for saying. But really, as Frank mentioned, to the young ones, I would say, work hard, persevere, make strong connections with your community, because you have, eminent people like Frank and others who are watching out for your best interests. So you build a network of people, you develop mentors who can then guide you through the pitfalls that seasoned people like you have seen, Frank, and guide young people through.
Sure.
And I think that's the way to succeed in America. It's through hard work and perseverance.
Well, thank you
Happy
very
to
much
hear
for coming. Mike, I
Frank,
really
it's been a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for having me, Frank.
Thank you for sharing with us all kinds of things that you do for our country.
It's been a pleasure.
That is our show. Till next time, this is Frank Islam of FY Investment Group wishing you a great week. Thank you for watching.